Good morning. I'm Hapa, and this is my good friend Max. And welcome to the VTuber Breakfast Club.
Good morning.
This is for any new folks. This is a short morning stream where we discuss a topic of choice, go over or take any questions, and then go over our daily goals. Today's topic of the day is minimalism and the Konmari method. Yeah, shall we dive into it, Max?
Yes, we shall.
Alrighty, well, you are resident expert on particularly the Konmari method. So what is the Konmari method?
Okay, so the Konmari method is one of my favorite things ever developed. It's essentially a series of techniques for discarding and storing items, which sounds very boring, but it's basically a guideline for minimalism. And so it was developed by this Japanese woman named Marie Kondo, who basically worked as just to give a little backstory, she worked as a professional, I guess you'd call her a professional organizer, or sort of I don't want to say professional caretaker. She would go into people's houses and she would help them reorganize their space, an interior decorator, so to speak.
She's sort of like that mix of like life coach and like interior sort of decorator, or that sort. Yeah, kind of a mix.
Yeah, she was kind of a life coach, kind of an interior designer. And so she would go around to people's houses and she would basically try to figure out how to improve their living space. She has this very sort of Zen mentality. She sort of treats everything like it's alive. So she goes into a person's house and she says, "Oh, here's this living space, and here are all these objects, and they're all alive, and they all have their own energy." And so, so she did that for several years, and then as she got more into it, she sort of learned that the more she discarded, the happier she was. She sort of realized as she went on, she kind of came to the realization that all of her efforts of storing things and organizing things didn't really lead to great results until she realized like tidying and discarding a lot of the items you don't really need really made people substantially better off. So she ended up kind of coming to the realization that you should really only keep a small number of items around you. You should only keep the things that truly make you happy. Because and she's Japanese and she lives in Japan and they have very small spaces.
Right. Spaces are
Compared to us big fat Americans who have gigantic houses and gigantic cars and everything. Everything's everything in America is huge. We have all this space, but she's in Japan and they have very limited spaces. And so she came into space after space after space that was just full of books and objects and things like that. So she ended up realizing that discarding the vast majority of that and then keeping it very particularly organized, she sort of developed these organizational techniques. And that kind of became the blueprint for what's called the KonMari method, which is it's essentially a 3-step method where you go through all of your items in your space.
Right.
And then it's sort of go through each one and you decide which ones spark joy. That's the phrase you spark joy, you have to go through every item in your house and determine whether or not it sparks joy. And for the ones that do, you keep them, and for the ones that don't, you throw them away. And this results in people throwing away half the things they own.
Right, because it's all too easy to just sort of accumulate things just incidentally and then not really deal with them. Like it's easier to just leave them laying around or hidden in a cupboard than actually dealing with getting rid of the things that you anymore.
Yes. And then step 3 is you take the things that are left and you organize them sort of category by category so that everything's visible at once. So
Mm,
you're not like digging through piles of clothes, you've got it all visually organized.
uh,
You're not like digging through drawers. You've got it all so when you open the drawer, you see everything.
I see.
It's to avoid having things that kind of get buried over time.
Right, right.
And this book basically, if I could pick one book that changed my life, I feel kind of embarrassed to say this because I want to pick something like
Yeah,
profound. I want to say
yeah,
like, ah, yes, the Divine Comedy. Oh, I read Dante's Inferno and it changed my life.
yeah.
But no, if there was um, if there was one book that changed my life, it was a Japanese cleaning book.
That's
Yeah.
quite incredible, but I guess I've also read it too, and it is quite amazing how the book is about so much more than just cleaning, you know?
Yes, and the name of the book she wrote is called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which is a very bold claim. If you're
Life
if
changing.
life-changing magic, if you're going to claim that something is life-changing,
Mm,
you better have a pretty good sales pitch. And
right.
I read the book and it literally changed my life. So,
Mhm.
yeah, tidying up literally is life-changing.
Yes. Neat. Oh man, to share a little anecdote on my end. Yeah, after I read that, or I guess we'll start with before. Before I read that book, lived in an apartment of my own. Yeah, I guess reasonable enough amount of space and stuff, I guess. But yeah, but when it came time to move to a new place, it was always so astounding the volume of things. It's just
Hmm.
it's like, man, the last time I touched this was the last time I moved, but I still have
Yeah.
it, right?
Yes.
And it's like it would just otherwise just linger around. Maybe it's buried, maybe it's just cluttered at the side of the room, and it was just kind of yeah, almost suffocating. Not in a very active way, but just those small little moments you look around and it wasn't just like, oh, what a beautiful space. It's just like, oh, whatever, right? Um,
Hmm.
but after reading that and giving the discarding a try, at least after the first iteration, even in my current space, I was like, wow, it's much more open. I feel much less burdened. This is great. And that actually prompted me then to move down to an even smaller apartment and then Konmari once again. And it was actually even better. It's crazy how much you think you need and how much you think you'll really use and how much you'll miss things if you don't have them. But really, you need a surprisingly little amount to, get by in the day to day. And there's definitely one category of things that I struggled most with paring down, and that was craft items. Since I quite enjoy handicrafts, making things, and that just requires a lot of tools and material, and particularly the materials, you don't have a specific agenda in mind for a lot, especially things that are left over from projects but that you could still reuse. So you think it's perfectly fine, I should keep this, but
Yeah.
I'm not working on this type of, say art or such right now, so do I keep it? Do I let it keep having the space? And
Mhm.
that was a really big challenge. And in the end, it kind of ended up coming down to keeping the valuable tools, the ones that I think are hard to replace, and keeping the materials that I was either very fond of or that would be very hard to replace, but that I'd quite like. And most of the replaceable stuff, it's like, yes, it's perfectly fine, but I'm not focusing on this right now, so no sense retaining it. For all the trouble it'd cause down the line moving or storing or that such.
Mm.
But it really was
Yeah.
quite eye-opening how much less you could go off of. Anyways, you're gonna say.
Well, no, that's that's exactly the same thing that happened to me. I read this book and I Konmari'd, and I thought, I used to think I'm pretty minimal. I don't have that much. And I Konmari'd, and this is the story that everyone has when they Konmari. They say, well, I don't really have that much that I want to get rid of. And then you go through the process and you ask, of the things I own, which things actually spark joy? And then you realize half the things you own don't spark joy, and
Right?
some of them annoy you. You'll have some items that you're just like, this is terrible. Why did I keep this around?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
dude. For me, like one thing I would kind of notice is for clothing, I would have a lot of items. Some of them that I'd even gotten quite recently, but I would for a long while I would get I would get clothing when I wanted a particular role in my wardrobe to be fulfilled, whether pragmatic or aesthetic. Um,
Hmm.
and I would prioritize getting a thing, in the moment now over whether or not it was really quite the right thing I was looking for, or that it was something that
Hmm.
I really liked. And so I'd end up like, oh, yeah, it was great for that one time when I just really wanted something for that. But overall, this isn't actually something I like. And so I
Yeah.
actually never reached for it. Uh, and then there's just, wow, so much clothes I never planned to grab first. Uh,
And it kind of annoys you too, because you're like, oh, I spent all this money on this piece of clothing that I don't wear. I spent like $100 on this, and now it's
exactly.
just taking up space.
Yeah.
So it just reminds you of your bad decisions. You're like, oh, well, that just annoys me every time I see it now.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Right.
So that's I was saying that's basically what happened to me. I married. I moved apartments. The move was much easier the second time. The movers even told me, they were like, man, this is a perfect move. This was like small amount of stuff, super easy to move. It's like, this is great. Moved into an even smaller apartment, got rid of even more.
Yeah.
And then I got rid of all my furniture and started living as a nomad. And
Mm-hmm.
now I just have a suitcase and a carry-on. And that's all the stuff I have in the world.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Because, yeah, well, it turns out for 95% of the things you own,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really need them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you really need? A pair of pants, a couple of shirts, pair of shoes, frying pan.
Any
Not all,
toiletries?
not
Little.
Yeah, some toilet paper, some
Like
soap.
and then like your electronics if you have like computer or phone,
Hmm.
that sort.
Your computer, your microphone,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and that's about it.
Yeah, that is about it.
On a day-to-day basis, you don't need all the other things you're bringing with you, all the plushies and the wardrobe full of things. And
Plushies are cute though.
well, if they spark joy, you can keep them.
And indeed, yeah, same. I've also been going nomad as well. Um, and I'm still a bit more sentimentally attached to some material goods, such as some plushes, some books, the sort of things that are voluminous or heavy and hard to travel with. So I did get a storage unit, but what's really nice is because I've managed to narrow down my possessions to things that I really, really enjoy. Like there's no question the cost of storage is totally worth it to be able to
Hmm.
still retain those while traveling. But there are some that again because say for example certain plushes just really bring a lot of like symbolic or sentimental joy. I actually in my suitcase I have like two plushes that come with me wherever I go. They're not like huge plushes or anything, but you know,
Hmm.
just they're really great reminders of some fun, sentimental, and symbolic things.
Yeah, and that's sort of the whole point of her ideology. It's
Mm,
that it's not about having nothing.
nothing.
It's not even about being a minimalist. It's actually about surrounding yourself with things that make you happy.
Mhm. Yes.
So the first part of her book is basically like how to discard.
Mm.
And her selection criteria is you take everything in your house, category by category, clothing, books, whatever. You go one category at a time
Hmm.
and you lay out all your clothes at once and you say, which clothes do I have that I actually love? Which ones actually spark joy that I
Hmm.
want to wear?
Yeah.
And then for all the ones that don't spark joy, get rid of them all. And then all of your books, you have like 50 books. Which ones actually spark joy? Okay, well, get rid of all the ones that don't. And you repeat that for every category, all of the bedding that you have, everything like that. So,
Each and everything, nothing gets left out. Mhm.
hmm so it ends up being the case that by the end of it, you're only surrounded by things that things that spark joy, as she puts it, things that genuinely make you happy.
Yeah.
And she basically says, like, you shouldn't she doesn't explicitly say don't use storage units, but she says
Yeah.
if you don't need something, yeah, she says your family doesn't need it either.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's basically not to store things at your parents' house, which a lot of young people do because a
Yeah.
lot of young people live in small apartments. Their parents' houses are very big and they can store all of this stuff at their parents' house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she says, if you don't need something, if you're going to store it at your parents' house, or if you're tidying up and your friend says, "Hey, can I have this?" or "Hey, can I have that?" She says you should basically do this alone with
Mhm.
no family members around
Yeah.
so that they can't take things. As soon as something's free and it's
Yeah.
going to be discarded, people want to take it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like it's free opportunity. What's not to love? It seems like it's zero cost, but it's actually not. It's $0, but it's still like again like material space, mental space cost. But people don't usually consider that. They just
And
do
it makes them feel better because they're not having something go to waste.
yeah. Even if it's something they
Sh
really don't need or ever plan to use.
Yeah, she brings up this one example in the book where she says this woman had a yoga mat and her mother saw her doing this KonMari method.
Hmm.
And so her mother sees her tidying and she gets her this perfectly good yoga mat that she just doesn't really use because she doesn't do yoga anymore.
Hmm.
And the mom is watching her. The mom says, "Oh, well, I could use that." And so the mom picks up the yoga mat, takes it into her room.
Hmm.
And so Marie Kondo asks, like, how often does your mom do yoga? And the woman says, she's never done yoga.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, I'm throwing away my old baseball bat. Oh, free baseball bat. I'll take that.
Yeah.
When are you gonna play baseball?
And it's like, oh, I played it, 15 years ago back in university or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then it becomes, well, I can use it for other things too. If somebody breaks in, it's good to have a baseball bat, but it's like if you really believed that, you would have bought it yourself years ago.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it's so easy and natural to justify decisions after they're made. uh,
Hmm
which is yeah easy. Like when you're just like when something becomes available, you're just like I want that because it's free. It's just a knee jerk reaction, like oh no cost, sure I'll take it, doesn't hurt. But then someone asks you, oh wow, why did you get that or why'd you take that? And then they're just like, uh, eh. They're just like, yeah, it's cause it's useful, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
as people struggle for an actual answer. Hmm.
Yeah. There's a whole, I won't go into it now, but there's a whole like series of
Uh,
techniques and things that goes into for storing items and keeping everything organized. And I won't go into that because it's all very specific to the items, and
Okay.
I think that's kind of secondary. I think the main takeaway from the book, even though it is important to make sure you don't just set things down on the table, which I do all the time. I do that all the time. I set it down, I walk away. But she has this way of organizing everything. But when it comes to the main benefit of the book, I think the main benefit isn't necessarily the organizational techniques. Those are beneficial. But I think the main benefit is the fact that you end up with a very different mindset. Your your focus fundamentally shifts from a higher quantity of goods to a higher quality of goods.
Yes, yeah.
And as a result of that, instead of having a closet full of clothes, you might have, 5 shirts, 7 shirts that you really wear all the time, and you get rid of everything else. You might have one or two books that you keep with you, and then you might get rid of all the rest of them. So
Yeah.
you're sort of only surrounding yourself with high quality items, which means everything around you sparks joy.
Yeah.
You don't end up with all the clutter. And that kind of led into the minimalist lifestyle that I have.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, same. It really is that mental shift, because then you think like more is not better. It's definitely just each item is hopefully around you and special for a clear reason, and for a reason that you deliberately chose, not that you just sort of let happen to you because it's, say, the path of least resistance, so to speak. And
Creates a
that's
fundamental shift in perspective, I think,
mm,
where you no longer allow life to happen to you. You start making very conscious decisions about what you want your, let's say, living space to be like.
right.
And you aggressively purge anything that doesn't fit into that mold.
Yeah.
And that fundamentally changes the way that you see not only the space you live in, but sort of life overall. I think this is why she calls it the life-changing magic of tidying up,
Right, yeah.
because of the fact that it fundamentally shifts the way that you perceive your living space, which changes the way you see life.
Yes,
Where
exactly.
there's actually one anecdote in her book where a woman says, going through this book made me realize what was really important and what wasn't. So I got a divorce.
Oh, I remember that example. But yeah, the things you need in your life. I mean, that includes people as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So she's got stories of people who go through this Konmari method and they end up getting divorces, or they end up breaking off friendships, or changing their familial relationships because of the fact that they realized certain people, certain partners, certain parents don't actually spark joy. They don't bring them anything positive.
Right.
So you might actually reduce the number of relationships you have and just focus on
The ones
the
that really
quality of those relationships rather than the quantity.
Yeah, it is actually quite phenomenal how her principle, it really lends you the, I guess, sense of agency and initiative to really shape your life to what you want it to be. Not just strictly with regards to like what shirts you own, or just material goods, but really it really makes it front and center that your life is what you can make it, and you can decide what it is, and there is a very real consequence and effect of that. And it's I think it's really helpful that it does start with something as tangible as material goods, because that is, very concrete and easy to see. But once you get that down, you start to realize the patterns that you use for your possessions can apply to how you use your time, or how you determine your relationships, how you form your goals, even, and that sort of thing. And I find that just really incredible. Like you said, that's what really makes that title, the life-changing magic of tidying up, really have weight because it really does extend so far beyond just possessions.
Yes, it's the sort of thing that extends to every facet of life, which means you can adopt a more minimal approach for your goals and for the people that surround you and for your jobs and things like that. So it really is a life-changing book.
Yeah.
I could talk about Konmari all day, but to
Same.
summarize, for anyone who hasn't read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up,
Mm-hmm.
legitimately one of the most profound, surprisingly profound books I've ever read.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much more than meets the eye. It is
Mhm.
about far more than just discarding old shoes.
Yes, tidying up can be a very broad term.
Mm-hmm,
So it's not just about getting rid of your clothes. It's about tidying up your life so
mm-hmm.
that the only things left in your life are the things that genuinely make you happy.
Yes. And that is the most wonderful one.
Check it out, read the book.
Yes. Absolutely great read. Oh man. Oh, that puts us actually at a pretty healthy discussion. We got like about 25 minutes in.
Hmm.
I think wrapped it up nicely. Perhaps a good place to call it.
I think so.
Well, thank you for sharing all the in-depth perspective and all the background to this. It really is uh, a phenomenal book.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, with that, I guess we can proceed to our usual Breakfast Club outro bits. Um, so, as always, any questions that appear in the chat, happy to answer. But otherwise, our last bit is sharing our daily goals. Um, yeah, I was thinking about these daily goals. We always do share like what our goal for the day is, but I realized we don't actually like follow back to maybe go over if whether or not we accomplish yesterday's goal. Uh, it's easy
That's
to say
true.
goals if you never have to really meet them. Uh,
That's true. That's true.
so I was thinking maybe I could do that too. Um, so I'll start since just today was just me on the stream. So for me yesterday, my goal was to begin packing. As I mentioned, earlier was the nomad. I'm doing the nomad life, and I'm actually due for a move in a couple days. So my goal yesterday was to begin packing up, filling up the suitcases with anything I don't use on the immediate day to day, that I could, front load that work a little bit and start to get a perspective for, hey, how heavy my suitcases are.
Hmm.
So that was the goal, and in fact, it did happen. Yeah, I've got like all everything but my non-essential electronics and like toiletries packed up, um, and laundry because right now laundry's being washed today. Um, but that really like helped set things up. Pulled out all my possessions onto the counter. Any kitchenware I wanted to bring or any electronics, books, that sort. So it's all out in the open and it's being packed into the suitcases. So I'm glad to say that goal was met. The ball is indeed rolling. So that brings me to today's goal. I think my goal today is to pack up some parcels. There are some like food and pantry items, but that are like perhaps not quite suitable to fly. Um, so that I'll instead like mail a box down with some of those because they're just pantry goods I really like or that are kind of hard to find. Um, I want to retain them. So my goal today: pack up those packages.
Are you down to 2 suitcases like you wanted to be?
mm, let me look. Suitcase is just like a bedroom. I think. Oh, yeah. I haven't like. On the one hand, I know that clothing is definitely my most like voluminous item, but um, as evidence from previous moves, and even then, I think I reduced my clothing a little bit. Since then, I think we're good on space. I'll just have to. I think the trickiest thing I think is electronics because they're kind of fragile and also kind of heavy, so you have to sort of find the right balance of how to pack them. But
Hmm.
Yeah, but I think it's looking good. It's looking good, but I suppose I'll know for certain in a day or two.
Nice.
Anywho,
Well,
long ramble on my end
yeah.
about goal. How about you?
My goal before was to clean my apartment and finish project at work, and I did. Well, I was kind of late on the project, but
Yeah, you know.
my goal today is to finish another important project at work. So I'm gonna get off stream, go to work, and try and do another project that's been on my plate for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Did you clean your apartment?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it too is nice and tidy, I hope.
Yeah, well, until I brought all that stuff from the office.
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
Once I picked up all the stuff from the office and brought it home, it became dirty again.
Oh no! I'm sure you'll make short work of that, so.
Hmm. Well, cluttered, not dirty.
Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, yeah. Ah,
Anyway, I guess we'll call it there.
yeah, sounds like we got our daily goals. I got the post office, you've got a work project.
Hmm.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the, minimalism and Marie Kondo discussion. Uh, yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. May you also achieve your goals that you set your mind.
Hmm. Tidy up and change your life.
Yes, indeed. Alrighty, well, we'll call it there. See you.
Yeah.